Hello students, I'm Mr. Ravenscroft, and today I would like to teach you how to write an equation in point-slope form. If you're using IXL, it's topic S.23, looking in the Algebra 1 list of topics, or you could type in shortcut PPE to find that topic on IXL, so PPE. All right, so how do you write an equation in slope-intercept form? What in the world is that formula? Let me first help you understand the formula by showing you where it comes from. So here's the formula. Y minus y1 is equal to m, the slope, times x minus x1. So instead of just labeling those and making you memorize kind of stressfully what those pieces mean in that formula, and stress and memory kind of go hand in hand, just you don't use it, you'll lose it. It just is a matter of time before that knowledge disappears. What I'd like to do instead is actually show you where this comes from so you understand how it works. So this came from something you've probably already seen by now if you're learning this formula. It came from this idea that when you have 2 points and you want to measure the distance between those points and talk about the steepness between here, we would say, well, you measure that using two things. You measure that using what's called a rise, and that was found using taking the y coordinates of the 2 points and subtracting those. So an example might have been if this one was at 2 and this one was at 5, you would say 5 minus 2, and you'd say, well, it went up 3, and that was the rise. So the rise is measured by subtracting the y's, right? And then we could say the x's tell us how far it's gone over the run. So when we subtract the x's, pretend this was at 1, this one is at 4, you would say, oh yeah, 4 minus 1, that would give me the run. That would tell me how much distance there is between them horizontally. And so when you subtract the x's, you get the run. Now, how did the slope turn into this formula? You might kind of see that they're all using the same letters. Here's what's happened on this actually. So they've actually taken this formula and said, hey, let's get rid of the denominator by thinking of it as a number, which is what happens when you subtract two numbers, you get one number. Let's get rid of dividing by that number on the denominator. How do you get rid of dividing by a number? You multiply by that number. So if you multiply by an x minus x, these x's would cancel on both sides, and you would end up with, write out what's left here, you would end up with the formula up above. Do you see it? The y minus y is on one side times the slope, equals the slope times x minus x. Now, why did they add in all these ones? So those ones are actually talking about the fact that we are specifically going to plug in a point on the line, and that point, that's the first point on the line, is what is going to be plugged in for these two variables. So they're going to put those ones there to talk about the point that's on the line. That's your first point. So if this x comma y is your first point on the line, they're going to put little ones right here, and that's because it's the first point that's on the line. So that's why those little subscripts of 1 are there. All right, so this 7 is talking about, of course, the slope, which the 7 is on our slope-intercept form is always what's multiplying times the input variable. Maybe that's why we use the letter m. Let's try using the formula, okay? So pretty straightforward. You label all your pieces, and then you just plug them in for these first type of problems that you might see when you're first learning this. So we'd say y minus, and then we plug in our y1 value. Our y1 value, there it is, it's an 8. Equals, okay, let's look for our slope here. The slope for us is the 7. Let's plug that in right here. Times, okay, then we have x minus, okay, our x1 value is negative 7. Because it's negative 7, we actually really need to be careful and put negative 7 in there. We don't want to just say, well, there's already a minus sign. A subtraction sign and a negative sign are different. And the formula actually says you're going to always start with a subtraction sign. You'll plug in your number regardless of the subtraction sign. Okay, so let's type that answer in over here, but take note, there are subtraction signs that are permanently stuck there for this first type of problem. So we're not going to reduce our minus and negative into a plus 7. We'll just type it in as it is. So take our first box here, we'll type in our y minus 8 equals our slope 7 times, parentheses, x minus, and then we had a negative 7. Okay, let's go ahead and try another problem. Let's look for one a little bit harder. Okay, in this one, we're actually going to type the whole equation in, start to finish, and we don't have to just do certain boxes of it. So let's give this a shot. It says we want a line that has a slope of 1/7 and passes through this point. I'm going to go ahead and label it right now, x comma y. We'll put the little ones there. It's the first point we know that's on the line. Here's our slope. We'll label it n. So what is the equation in point slope form? So we don't need to go solving it for y equals mx plus b. We don't need to put it in slope intercept form. We'll leave it in point slope form. But this does insinuate here that we can go ahead and simplify any minus and negatives. We'll turn those into add the opposite plus some number. So y minus, there's our y1, equals the slope times x minus, and there's our x1 value. All right, so we have x1, we have our slope, and then we have our y1 value. All right, we've labeled them all. We simply plug them in, and it looks like we have y minus -10 equals m. Okay, that's -1/7. And, oops, sorry, it's a positive number. Thought that was a minus sign. X minus 9. So this is our formula. And any simplifying we might do, let's see. I do see right here we have minus and negative, so we could go ahead and make that y plus 10. So here's our final equation. It doesn't seem that we need to distribute it or solve for y or anything, so that'll be our final answer. Let's try typing that in and make sure we're understanding this. Y plus 10 is equal to 1 divided by 7 times parentheses x minus 9. Okay, well, let's try another one just a little bit harder. Okay, for this last type of problem, this is in the SMART score 90 range. We are not given the slope, but yet we need to use point slope formula. So we're going to have to find the slope. First, understand what you're doing real quick. There's 2 points, one at 1, 9, so some point up here, another one at 8, 4, so 8 and a 4, something like this. And they want you to write a line that goes through these, write the equational line that goes through those 2 points. So the first thing we're going to figure out is how steep is this graph, right? So how much does it go down? How much does it go over? I think a quick sketch is pretty helpful here. Some of you that are visual learners, you'll probably say, you know, I just kind of prefer graphing this point and then ask myself, how much does it go down? How much does it go over? I mean, from 9 to 4, you would just say, yeah, that goes down 5. And I'll put a negative sign because it goes down. And then some of you might say, well, how much does it run? Well, it goes from 1 to 8, so doesn't it go over 7, right? And some of you that like more procedural learning, you're going to use your formula and say, well, y minus y and x minus x. And some of you would go a step further and say, yeah, but order matters. So whatever point you're choosing as your second point and your first point, like you've got to go with the same order. So y2 minus y1 and x2 minus x1. That's supposed to be a 2 there. And you would get really formal and label all these and say, okay, here's my first point. I'll put little ones beside it. Here's my second point. And you're going to say, okay, I might even use the best method, which is to maybe circle the y value so I don't misplug in my numbers. So let's try this. All right, so our slope would be, let's say we're taking y2 minus y1. So that would be, I like to put the parentheses and then plug them in, 4 minus 9 over, okay, now let's go in the same order. So if we started with the second point, this one here, when we subtracted the y's, we need to start with the second point when we subtract the x's. So I would put it over 8 minus 1. Looks like we get -5 on top, 4 minus 9 if you add the opposite. And 8 minus 1 is 7. So we got the same slope. Personally, if I can graph them, I will. But it's a little bit of a crutch to say I only know how to solve it when I can graph them, because they could give you points very far away. So not a bad thing to review how to find the slope using the slope formula. Hey, now that we know the slope, I'm going to go ahead and clear the screen so I have a little bit of space to finish the problem. Actually, I'll go ahead and erase it. That way you can leave the graph on there and use that as a reference. So we have the slope, -5/7, and we need to finish it off by writing the equation. So this is reviewing what you've been doing. Yeah, but I don't know which point to use. Don't worry about it. Just choose one. They're both on the line. They both should work. I'm going to choose this one, 1, 9. it already has the labels x1 and y1. So using that point that's circled in pink, using this slope that's boxed up in pink, let's use our formula, and let's see if we can get our final answer. Okay, y minus, plug in our y1 value. Let's see, that is the 9 there, and equals the slope. All right, slope for us was the negative 5/7 times x minus, and then our x value there it is, it's 1. You have to be careful and grab the numbers from the exact same point you were using the y values from. That's actually our equation. If we were to solve it out slope-intercept form, it would end up having a y-intercept a little bit higher than 9, probably about 10 point something, and we'd know for sure we have the right answer. For now, if we think we've plugged everything in right, we're going to go ahead and type it in to wrap up this topic. So we had y minus 9 is equal to negative 5/7, it's parentheses x minus 1, and that's how we would type it in. You can use the little fraction bar for that 5/7 if you want, but you don't have to. So, all right, that's going to wrap up this problem, and you guys can go ahead and try these yourself. Let me know if you have any questions. I'd be glad to help, and I hope you guys can rock it out with a whole lot more peace. All right, see you guys later. Love you all. Bye-bye.